All right, so welcome to call number 18. It should be just like the last 2 or 3 calls. It should be just very fast. It's just a recap of where we stand and what are the changes that we're going to make. We were requested to have the full up-to-date CL spec, in-depth CL spec. So luckily, Justin, as informed last week, he merged my large PR updating the tests. So that was merged last time. He changed it. He put it up to date and merged it, which was very useful. So now the 7732 branch actually does have all tests up to the previous fork, at least. So we are in a situation where we can add new test vectors. So the 2 changes that we want to make, and I wanted to comment on them, are for choice. Well, it's just for choice, but the thing is that this induces an extra. So let me describe yet again. We had this described by Francesco not long ago, but I want to make again a quick description of what these changes to for choice are, because they're actually minimal. The current spec, or at least the design notes for the spec, so we rely to give safety to the builder. We rely on this mechanism by which, if the builder decides not to reveal a payload because the block is poor, that is, it's not attested, then our for choice is made in such a way that we will reorg the full block. So that's the way that we have of giving the builder safety. And for this, we change the way of accounting weights in for choice, so that if you see a block, say, late, and you vote for its parent, then your vote counts against the block that was late. So not only it doesn't count for the block, but it actually counts against. And then the next proposer uses that weight to reorg the block. So that is just the current design, and this has names as block slot voting. Francesco proposed something that is less invasive to for choice, which is, let's rely on the same mechanism that we have today. Let's not reorg the block. The next proposer is allowed to reorg the block if it's very poor by using proposer boost. But even if the next proposer decides not to reorg the block, what we can do is allow the builder not to reveal by, if the block is poorly voted, then the payload doesn't need to pay the fee. So that's the mechanism is much simpler from the point of view of for choice, because now you don't need to be accounting votes for the parent block against the block that was late. So that's an advantage. It's much simpler in the sense that the weights are essentially the same as we do today. So let me describe the changes. So as today, nothing changes in the way of accounting votes, except the following. If you vote for a block root, and that block root is based on a full parent or is based on an empty parent, then your vote can only be supporting one of these 2 branches, like either the empty parent or the full parent. So whenever you lock in on a block root, you're only voting, so you're already locking in on the status of the parent payload. So that's the change, and this is already included in the current CL spec. So essentially, the only change that we need to do to the current CL spec is to remove the weights, is to remove the boosts. And that's what I will do. However, there is another change that is on the blockchain itself, which is as follows. Since now, so let me describe how is currently the mechanism. So this is something that gets actually more complicated because of Francesco's for choice change. So today, the current PR, and this is the behavior we have now with Teku on the DevNet, is that when we process a block, it includes a bid, it includes a header from the builder, and then it immediately deducts the payment from the builder and it gives it to the proposer. Now, this is safe in the current mechanism because the way that we have to enforce this safety for the builder is that the full block will be reordered if the block is weak, and therefore the builder will not pay because the block will not be even included. However, if we go with Francesco's fourth choice, the mechanism now will be different. We will allow the block to remain there, and still, if it's poor, we don't want to enforce the payment from the builder to the proposer. So how do we do this now? We will have to change this in the following way. When we process a block, when we process the block, the consensus block, so we have a header, we will deduct the payment from the builder, but we will not give it to the proposer. We will put it in a queue. This queue will be just a circular buffer of 64 slots. These are going to be the last 2 epochs worth of blocks. Now, when we process a payload, there are 2 different ways of doing this. I'm going to describe the easiest way. When we process the payload, then that payload by definition has to be the payload for the latest block that you have. So you cannot feel a missing payload that you have in previous slots, that just in previous blocks. That's impossible because then you will just change the remainder of the chain. So you can only include a payload for your current head of the chain. So when you do this, then you remove the payload from that queue and you give it to the proposer. So you just empty whatever you had the queued payment and you give it to the proposer. So the proposer immediately gets paid, and this is fine because the block is included and the builder, the builder already was deducted this payment. However, what happens if we never process the payload? That means the builder has withheld the payload, or the payload was late, or whatever it is. Then what we're going to do is whenever we process attestations coming from blocks for a given block root, we will add the effective balance of the validator. So this is add process attestation. We will add the effective balance of that validator to the queue element. So this queue will have this last 64 blocks. It will have the value that the builder was deducted, and it will have the weight of the validators that attested to that block root. 2 epochs later, when we are processing epoch transition, we're going to grab these 32 blocks of the full epoch that we're just processing. It doesn't need to be finalization or anything. We're just processing epoch transition. It has nothing to do with finalization.
Yeah,
so
because this follows the includability rule for the attestation, which is 64.
Exactly. So this is the only thing that matters here is that you can no longer attest to these blocks. So therefore, you already know what the weight is, and that's precisely the case. So this is no interactions with the FFG, which is the problem. So then, but at that epoch transition, then you know that this block, what is the weight with respect to the full committee. And if the block has more than 60%, then you give the payment to the proposer. And if the block has less than 60%, then you return the payment to the builder. So that's the change. So it makes blockchain slightly worse. We're going to have to keep this buffer of 64 elements in the state. Whenever we process a block, we're going to have to modify process attestations so that we grab the balance and we give it to the we add it to this particular spot. I think it's safe to have it as a circular buffer. It's going to be overwritten in every single slot. That's fine. And so I've done that design, and it seems to be robust. And I think it's fine for clients, and it's not so invasive, because when you're processing attestation, you already have at hand the justified state to get the balances, because you need that state anyways to process the attestation. So I think it should be a simple change. And these are the 2 changes that, if it's all right with you guys here, I'll just open the PR immediately, and then we just can move on and have have the full, well, the full
I
deadline.
have just one comment here. So now this 64 slot validity for the attestation is tied to a specific length of the ring buffer in the state. Are these two things actually the same thing from a consensus spec? And I'm not remembering in my head now. So if we end up changing that 64 length for the attestation, is this anyway a consensus change by itself, or then?
Yes. So if we change the validity of the attestation for, I mean, I'm not sure if I understand the question, but if we change the includability of an attestation to be more than 64 slots, then that's a hard fork.
But it's hard fork by itself, or just now because we have this ring buffer that is tied to that length?
No, I think it's by itself today, right? So
okay. I just want to make sure that introducing this is not adding a consensus change on
I
top
can
of
double
that
check,
number.
but I believe that an attestation actually is not includable if it's more than.
And it's a consensus rule, so the state is invalid.
We can check it, but I think so. In either case, if it's not, then it wouldn't be a problem because this still becomes independent. I think it doesn't weaken the builder's safety if we just still decide to pay
So
if the block has 60% in the next 2 epochs.
You can actually do the calculation anyway in 64 slot length, even if is not really aligned to, but it's less.
Exactly. So the thing is that it might be the case that the builder could delay attestations for more than 2 epochs to not to pay, but
yes.
But that's sort of like a far-fetched attack that doesn't say much, right? Because it is a builder that doesn't want to produce the block.
Yeah,
so this block by definition cannot be included. So it's a grieving vector that is silly.
Yeah.
So this is only the path when the payload actually is not even produced. So what can happen is that someone wants to grieve the builder by like withholding attestations for a long time, and then it may happen that well, yeah, I don't know. I wouldn't know how to exploit this after 2 epochs, so it doesn't matter. Okay, so these are the only two, and all of the other stuff we already discussed, and I think it's we sort of agreed. Let's just keep it simple. No payments for PTT attestations. There are some things of view merging that I don't know if probably I should describe here. There's this extra change that is sort of like off the protocol itself. It's off chain, which is the following: is you are gathering PTC attestations, and so they start coming in, let's say at 9 seconds or whatever deadline we put. Then at 10 seconds, you need to not consider any more attestations. So when you're going to do the analysis in for choice, you are going to include the PTC attestations that you only observed up to 10 seconds, plus all of the attestations that come in the incoming block. So this is to give a slight buffer for the proposer to merge the view with the rest of the attesters. So that's a minor change. It should be trivial in fortunes. And this, it doesn't need to be included in the CL spec. Well, probably is in the honest validator spec. There should be a comment about this. Oh, actually on PTC attestation, I need to change this so that you don't include any for choice. If it's not coming from a block and it's coming after 10 seconds, then that should be there. And so this thing of like not paying for attesters or ignoring the second attestation if it's an equivocation, all of those things we've already agreed. So I think it's useless to continue discussing them. So are there any questions about the changes that I'll push either today or Monday? All right. That's it. I think Kev wanted to know about the status, and we haven't changed. We're locked on these changes for the last couple of weeks. We had a finalized indefinite, which is quite stable. We're gonna iterate again after including these changes, and we're gonna try to like have the next one already fully featured. Anything else? Okay, this. Has there been any further thought on how 7732 works with fossil? Yes. So there hasn't been any new study, as far as I know. The trade-offs are like well known. The fossil makes the timelines in ePBS slightly worse, but at the same time, ePBS makes the timelines for fossil to be slightly better. So fossil like worsens slightly ePBS, and ePBS enhances fossil slightly because it gives a better timeline to check the satisfaction of inclusion lists. And Francesco's 4 choices are like is adapted. It's simpler than the version that I had in a way that it makes it easier also to verify to overload the PTC so that they can sign not only for the availability of the committee, but also for the satisfaction of the inclusion lists. So you can overload the PTC to do that. That's in that sense is that it's slightly worse for ePBS because now the PTC members, they need to perform a task that they didn't need to do before. Are there any more questions? Justin just logged in. I don't know if you guys have any questions from the EL side. Okay,
nothing specifically, but I'm just kind of lurking for now. I'm trying to learn more about ePBS and fossil in general, specifically in the context of Anders' design for sealed transactions. So just so you know why I'm here.
I see. Yeah, so I think I complained with Anders that the design as it is today is not compatible. It's strictly not compatible with the ePBS. So let's see. Caleb had a question. Does ePBS consider changing the spec design for peer DAS? Are they good to go in the same fork? No. So ePBS is definitely not ready to go in the same fork as peer DAS today. We are basing our branches on top of Electra, not on top of peer DAS. They are both compatible. ePBS makes peer DAS easier because it also gives much more time for propagation of blobs on columns. And again, Francesco already took care of like adjusting for choice to be compatible with peer DAS by also overloading the PTC so that the PTC now it would signal not only availability of the committee and of the payload, not only a satisfaction of the inclusion list, but also satisfaction of GA. So if we do that, then again, it's the same situation as with fossil. Peer DAS makes ePBS slightly worse, and ePBS makes peer DAS better. And for the same reason, because now the PTC members, they have less time to perform more duties. So I'm not sure what else can we do, can we say? All right, so is there no more questions? We can go have lunch, get on with our lives. I expect that the next meeting that we have is going to be more intense, or at least we're going to be planning an actual testnet again, because the CL spec should be ready in 2 or 3 days. I'll ping you guys to review the PR. Right, I see a thumbs up from Enrico. It's good enough for me. Until we have other clients, I'll only focus on Prism and Teku having this DevNet. All right, guys. Thank you very much. And I'll see you in a couple of weeks.
Have a good weekend.
Thanks, Beto. See you.
Bye, guys.
Bye.
Bye.